In farming, cogeneration means, turning one fuel source into two valuable outputs, power and heat. As it relates to infinite banking, you're doing the financial equivalent, using one pool of money to generate both growth and access so that your dollars can actually work harder, like a well-run cogeneration system on the farm. There's an actual place that we can plug into to create our own banking system like the ones that we know about. And guess what that financial vehicle is? It happens to be a dividend-paying whole life insurance contract, as long as it is properly designed for your usage.
Welcome to the WinEH podcast. This show is focused on empowering ranchers. Whether you're a seasoned rancher or just getting started, we'll guide you on how to use the infinite banking concept as an alternative way to finance your operations. It's a better way to think about money. Join us as we discuss planning for the future, attracting the next generation, and the art of keeping more money within the family. Here's your hosts, Winnie and Lacy.
Hey, welcome in. And we are very honored that you chose to lean in with us today for another conversation around actually not a conversation, it's really a book study conversation session with us that is on page 19 and 20 of the 5th edition of the Becoming Your Own Banker book. And this particular session today is all about creating a bank like the ones you already know about. And the title in and of itself is quite fascinating, should be intriguing, in fact.
Whenever we first meet with someone or they first learn about the concept, this is quite shocking to them because most people are like, what do you mean, like, create my own bank? Like, supposed to open up a bank or what? I love the title, but it can also catch people off guard because we never really think about being able to create a bank. So the first question is like, well, how's that even possible?
And what can you do it with? And quite often, in truth, this is not something that I dive into deeply with people who are just looking into infinite banking. Becoming Your Own Banker is only a 91-page book, and there is a bit to unpack. I love how Nelson's ability to sort of unpack things, but also like drive down a complicated, perhaps subject, and then condense it down to like a simple 1 or 2 pages. That's a gift that Nelson really had in order to articulate. But how this page begins is with a bit of history of what is the effort that is required to even up like the banks that we know about. An actual, like here in Canada, it's like our big 5 banks, the credit unions, all of these things. As humans, sometimes, we come to a point where our huge desire is to really simplify things. And why is that? Is because we know as humans, we have created so like a lot of barriers sometimes. And so like when you think about what it means to open up a bank, it takes decades to properly open up a chartered bank and millions of dollars and ton of patience to have a bank open. And there's an analogy, used in here around how an iceberg, like really what's going on is you only ever get to see 10% of what's actually going on in the surface, but there's 90% of a lot of the effort of what you end up seeing above the ice is what's taking place underneath. And I think it's also like this analogy as well, like when 2 people get married, graduation, a ceremony lasts like 2 hours, but how many months?
How did it take?
This also goes back to my years of growing up in the restaurant industry, or just even in when it comes to like banquets, serving large events. It takes so much time, effort, and energy to get everything set up so that when people come into the room, every place setting is done nicely. Every glass is polished. Every utensil is polished. Like everything is just placed just so. And how much manpower did it take to have that experience come in, like a 10-second experience come in for like a person to walk into something like that? And it's very much the same when we think about what kind of effort does it take to open up a bank. right? A regular bank that we are all used to, that we've known all our lives. And that in the same breath, the good news is, due to the concept of cogeneration that is talked about on page 20, unless you're familiar with cogeneration, which I was not familiar with the term cogeneration before I read this book. It's a term used in the production of electrical power. So related, because we have our farmers and ranchers listening in. In farming, cogeneration means, turning one fuel source into two valuable outputs, power and heat. As it relates to infinite banking, you're doing the financial equivalent, using one pool of money to generate both growth and access so that your dollars can actually work harder, like a well-run cogeneration system on the farm. What he's saying is that there's an actual place that we can plug into to create our own banking system, like the ones that we know about, by taking advantage of knowing this understanding of cogeneration, something that has already been building up for years underneath, something that we didn't have to put any effort into, and we can plug into that system so that we can both grow and access our money at the same time. And guess what that financial vehicle is? It happens to be a dividend-paying whole life insurance contract, as long as it is properly designed for your usage. And whether you're in Canada or the US, it's designed for the use of using it in your bank is like a fingerprint. It just really depends on what it is that you are looking to achieve.
I just had that conversation today with someone who was beginning their education journey, reading the book and whatnot. We could line up 100 people, and if every single person had a policy, every single policy would look different. And so when we talk about this section of creating your own bank, because banking is just second nature to everyone, going to the bank, depositing money, borrowing money, paying money back, we've never really stopped to think about what does it take to create a bank, how much time has gone into that bank for it to be what it is today. And so I love your analogy of like plugging into a system that's already been built. So what does that look like if someone comes and plugs into that system? Because he goes in and he says on page 19, now you're finally in business as a bank. So now what?
What's really actually important, because it's really starting to amalgamate from the last episode that we did around the problem. If you don't know what the problem is, you don't know what the solution is, and the ability to finance every single dollar in a much more effective way to be able to keep more dollars in your pocket. Now, banks cannot lend out money unless there's a deposit made.
Yeah, that's what I was just have highlighted next. Yeah.
Meaning that if we're going to start a bank like the banks that we know about, we have to make a deposit. And if we're going to loan money to ourselves, we also have to repay that loan as well. So yes, the infinite banking concept, when you use it in your life as a financial lifestyle, it's going to require even a greater degree of discipline, because at least with the banks, we already have a psychological built-in discipline that if you don't pay your banks back, well, you're going to lower your credit score. You're going to feel guilty. Like for some people will make poor financial decisions because they just want that monkey off their back. They just want to pay off someone else, right? Because they know that they're a slave to that lender until it's gone off of their sheet. So you almost have to it's not about escaping the process of borrowing money and creating money to lend from, right? It's not about escaping that. It's about creating more control in your environment. Like you be the lender. You also be the one to save. You also be the one to repay yourself, right? Because otherwise, if you don't repay yourself back, the next thing that Nelson talks about at the on page 20, near the bottom on the left side, he talks about, remember this, because in the banking system I'm going to tell you about, you can also destroy it by not obeying the basic rules of banking. Loans. So as it relates to when you start a banking system like this for yourself, loans have to be paid back or you can kill the best business in the world.
I have the same sentence highlighted.
It's up to you, but don't try to blame others when it happens. That's probably one of the most highlighted statements in the book for almost anyone who reads it too, because again, this is why it's such a fun read, even though this is about money, because Nelson talks like this all the way throughout the book. Like, I love how he says it's up to you. Don't try to blame others when it happens.
Yeah. And I think too, like a couple of episodes ago, I referred to when the teacher goes out of the room and the class behaves, or you have a substitute teacher and everybody misbehaves. It's the same thing. When we know that we're the bank owner, we're the lender, and we're only accountable to ourselves, are we gonna do and treat our money the same way as we do the bank's money? Or are we gonna be like the classroom full of students who misbehaves when there's a substitute teacher? It's up to us, because there's consequences for every choice we make, and they're either good or they're bad.
So kind of closing off on just like the cogeneration piece of this, there's more to unpack here, is like creating your own banking system through the use of dividend-paying life insurance is much like cogeneration. It's all the ingredients are already there in place. All you have to do is understand what is going on in order to tap into the system, right? And maybe you might not fully, like when I hear those words, knowing everything that I know right now, if you haven't gotten involved in this yet, or if you are involved and you really haven't used it yet, it's like you guys have such a huge opportunity to tap into the work that has already been done for us. Like, we did not have to wait decades before opening a bank. We did not have to put up millions of dollars to create the kind of momentum that a bank can make. I mean, is it worthwhile for a regular chartered bank to open? Yes, just look at their freaking financial statements every quarter and look at their interest income line. It's billions of dollars. It's worth the effort, but it's relative. We can repeat the same successful thing in our own life with our own purchases made. We just have to understand the value of getting into it, and that it's actually so much easier. And the reason why I'm so excited for anyone who's already involved, but also people who are not involved, is like, man, the opportunity is so huge because it costs so much less. And what has to be put in is like not even a drop in the bucket as to like the effort that charter banks have to go through to make it happen. So Nelson also goes in here to say, like, there's a couple of different resources here that Nelson goes to talk about, and really to get the full understanding of how powerful of a resource we have before us. Nelson was such a huge history buff, right? Like, he recommended the book of like The Case Against the Fed by Murray Rothbard. That's really powerful in helping us understand how the banking system actually truly works. There's so much to really go off of here, and it also ties into like the problem. If you have no idea about the problem, or why, Nelson also talks about why you should not do business with the banks. These couple of pages are very effective, again, for him listing off some resources as to, some pretty big reasons why not to, because the banking system actually creates inflation, is a big proponent of inflation.
Yeah. I like how, Nelson goes through the history of one particular bank that went under back in the 80s because just bad business and some loans weren't getting repaid. So that's pretty interesting. But I like where he says, when we're getting towards the end of this, first of all, he says, you must admit that getting into the banking business, like a brick and mortar business, is very costly and time consuming. And then he goes on to say there's a much easier way to accomplish the creation of your own banking system, and the mechanism has been around for over 200 years. So just to reiterate what you were saying, the work has already been done. It's tried and true, and it's called participating whole life insurance. And so if you are listening and you've been listening for a while and you're sitting on this, the time is now. You don't know what it would look like for you until you take that leap. And even when you take the leap, maybe it's what you've been looking for, and maybe it's not. But you don't know unless you look further into it. And exactly what you said, just to repeat this, all the ingredients are already there and they're in place, guys. It's just up to you to act on what is being put in front of you. And my belief is that there's a time and a place for everything. And if this is continually coming back up for you, maybe it's time to take that leap and look at it. And we're here to coach you and guide you along the way, because it is our mission to help farming and ranching families be less reliant on the bank so that we can continue living the lifestyle that we're living and pass these operations on to the next generation. Because, I mean, what we've built and what the people before us have built, it's worth saving.
Yeah, 100%. It so is. And again, if anything, we hope that this session has really inspired you again, just even based on the concept of cogeneration, that we don't have to work as hard to make our dollars work even more for us, even though we're not diving, our sessions are not meant to dive so deeply into every single nook and cranny and detail. But one of the things that we might not have yet touched on this is he just touches on a bit of how banks came to lend money in the first place. So, and he often has said too, one of the hugest prevailing reasons why he ended up writing this book is that for all of the history books that Nelson has read, 100% of almost any war that is taking place out there, the origin of that is usually comes down to bankers. So
interesting.
Yeah. And so the common denominator is, if banking is the problem, then banking is also the solution. But who owns the bank? And that should be us. All right.
Okay. We appreciate you. Thank you for listening. If you could head over to our website, rancherway.com, that's where you are going to find the power combo where you're able to purchase both books at one time. If you've read one, trust me, you will want to read the next one. Leave us a 5-star review over on Apple or Spotify, and catch us on YouTube. Thanks, guys.
So glad you leaned in with us on the WinEH podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.